The trouble started 3 months before Ella Carter felt rope against her skin. Brimstone Crossing had always been the kind of town where everybody knew everybody else's business, knew when old Mrs. Henderson's hip was acting up, knew when the Malloy boys snuck whiskey from their father's still, knew when someone was having money troubles before they missed their first payment at the general store. It wasn't paradise. The desert didn't allow for paradise, but it was theirs, and for the most part, people looked after each other. Then Sheriff Tom Bridger took a bullet in the back. Nobody saw who fired it. Bridger had been making his evening rounds, same as he'd done for 15 years, checking doors and tipping his hat to the last stragglers heading home from the saloon. Next morning, they found him face down in the dirt between the feed store and the bank. Blood pooled black beneath him, his gun still holstered. The town buried him on a Tuesday. By Wednesday, Vain Coulter rode in with 8 men and a piece of paper he claimed was a federal appointment. Tragedy. "What happened to Bridger?" Coulter had said, standing in the middle of Main Street while his men sat their horses in a loose semicircle behind him. He was tall, narrow through the shoulders, but wide through the chest, with pale eyes that didn't blink as often as they should. "Real tragedy, but law doesn't stop just because one man falls. I'm here to make sure this town stays safe." He smiled when he said safe. Several people would later swear they felt cold despite the afternoon heat. The mayor at the time, Gerald Hobbs, who ran the land office and mostly got elected because nobody else wanted the job, had squinted at the paper Coulter handed him. "This doesn't look official," he'd said. "You calling federal authorities liars?" Coulter's hand had drifted toward his gun. Not threatening, exactly, just resting there. Hobbs had handed the paper back. No, I suppose if you say it's legitimate." "I do say." Coulter tucked the document back into his coat. "Now, my men and I have been riding hard. We'll need accommodations. The hotel should do fine." "The hotel's full up," said Martha Crane, who owned the place. She was 63 and didn't scare easily. "Got a family from Denver staying while their wagon gets repaired." Coulter had looked at her for a long moment. Then he'd nodded to 2 of his men. They dismounted and walked into the hotel. 3 minutes later, the Denver family came stumbling out with their belongings in their arms, the father's nose streaming blood. "Rooms are available now," one of Coulter's men had called out. Nobody said anything. That was the first time Brimstone Crossing went quiet when it should have roared. The weeks that followed were like watching a noose tighten slowly. Coulter's men, he called them deputies, though none wore legitimate badges, spread through town like a stain. They collected taxes that went into Coulter's pocket instead of the town treasury. They broke up a church service because they didn't like the hymn selection. When old Jacob Stern protested the assessment on his store, they burned it to the ground and told him he was lucky they'd let him crawl out first. Mayor Hobbs tried to send a telegraph to the federal marshal's office in Santa Fe. The telegraph operator, a kid named Danny, who couldn't have been more than 19, got caught. Coulter dragged him into the street and beat him unconscious while the whole town watched. Then he addressed the crowd. "You people need to understand something," he'd said, standing over Danny's crumpled form. "This is my town now. You live here because I allow it. You breathe because I permit it. The old rules are gone. There's only one law in Brimstone Crossing, and I am that law." Someone in the crowd, nobody ever admitted who, had whispered, "Someone needs to stop him." Coulter had smiled. "You think someone's coming to save you? Look around. You're alone out here, middle of nowhere. By the time anyone official heard about your troubles and bothered to investigate, I could kill every last one of you and be across the border sipping tequila." He'd nudged Danny's unconscious body with his boot. "This boy here learned an important lesson today. The rest of you should learn it too. Obedience keeps you breathing." After that, the town stopped whispering about resistance. They just endured. The Carter Ranch sat 5 miles outside town, far enough that Ella and her brother Calder had mostly avoided Coulter's attention those first weeks. They raised cattle, not a big operation, just enough to make a living, and came to town only when necessary. Ella had been 24 then, Calder 27. Their parents had died in a cholera outbreak 6 years prior, leaving them the land and each other. Calder was the quiet one, always had been. He could go days speaking in nothing but nods and grunts, but when he did talk, people listened. He was the kind of man who thought before acting, who measured twice and cut once, who never picked fights but never backed down from them either. Ella was different. Where Calder was stone, Ella was fire. She spoke her mind, laughed loud, and had once knocked out 2 of Billy Parsons' teeth when he got handsy at a barn dance. She could rope a calf faster than most men, could track deer through country that would lose anybody else, and had a stubborn streak wide as the Rio Grande. "You need to be careful," Calder had told her one evening as they mended fence. The way things are in town is wrong," Ella had interrupted. "Somebody needs to stand up to Coulter. Somebody will get killed trying. Then what, we just let him do whatever he wants?" Calder had hammered in another post before answering. "I'm saying pick your battles. That man is looking for an excuse. Don't give him one." Ella had wanted to argue but held her tongue. Calder wasn't a coward. She knew that. He was just practical, and maybe he was right. Maybe keeping their heads down was the smart play. Then came the incident with Thomas York. York owned the bank, and he'd made the mistake of refusing to hand over the contents of the vault when Coulter demanded them. "This is depositors' money," York had said. "I can't just—" He didn't get to finish. Coulter shot him in the chest, right there in his own bank, in front of 3 customers. York had staggered backward, clutching the wound, blood spreading across his white shirt. "Anyone else need to debate property rights?" Coulter had asked the witnesses. They'd shaken their heads. York died the next day. The doc said if he'd gotten proper treatment immediately, he might have survived. But Dr. Moss was forbidden from seeing him. Coulter's orders. "Let it serve as an example," he'd said. They buried York next to Sheriff Bridger. The funerals were getting more frequent. 2 weeks after York's murder, Calder rode to town for supplies and didn't come back. Ella waited through the afternoon, then the evening, then the night. By dawn, worry had turned to fear. She saddled her horse and rode hard toward Brimstone Crossing. She found him halfway there. His horse was grazing by the roadside, reins dragging. Calder lay in the dirt 20 feet away, face down, unmoving. Ella's heart stopped. She threw herself from the saddle and ran to him, rolled him over, searching for wounds, for breathing, for any sign of life. His eyes were open but unfocused. Blood matted his hair where something had struck him from behind. His breathing came shallow and ragged. "Calder! Calder! Look at me!" She cradled his head, hands shaking. "Who did this?" He tried to speak, but only blood came out. His lips moved, forming shapes she couldn't understand. Then his hand gripped her wrist with surprising strength. "Run," he managed to whisper. Just that one word, barely audible. "I'm not leaving you. Run." Then his eyes rolled back and his hand went slack. Ella screamed. She screamed until her throat was raw, until she had no voice left. Then she lifted her brother. He was heavy, dead weight, but she was strong and desperate, and somehow got him across his saddle. She led both horses back to the ranch at a stumbling run, tears streaming down her face. Dr. Moss came, even though it meant defying Coulter's standing order that he treat no one without permission. The old physician worked through the night while Ella paced outside the bedroom, praying to anything that would listen. "I've done what I can," Moss said near dawn, emerging with bloodied hands. "The blow to his head, it's severe. He's in a coma. Might wake up tomorrow. Might wake up in a month. Might not wake up at all." "Will he live?" Moss couldn't meet her eyes. "I don't know." For 3 days, Ella sat beside Calder's bed, watching his chest rise and fall with mechanical regularity. She talked to him, told him about the ranch, about the cattle, about everything and nothing. She begged him to wake up. He didn't. On the 4th day, Vain Coulter came to the ranch with 6 men. Ella met them in the yard, rifle in hand. "This is private property. You're not welcome here." Coulter sat his horse easy, hands folded over the saddle horn. "That any way to greet your new sheriff, Miss Carter?" "You're not the sheriff. You're a murderer wearing a badge you stole." "Strong words," he smiled. "I'm here on official business. There's been a crime committed." "Yeah, against my brother. Who did it?" "Funny you should mention that." Coulter dismounted, his men following suit. "See, we found evidence suggesting your brother attacked one of my deputies. Self-defense situation. The deputy fought back, Calder went down. Unfortunate, but legal." "That's a lie." "You calling me a liar, Miss Carter?" "I'm calling you exactly what you are." Coulter's smile widened. "Feisty, I like that. But here's the thing. There's been another incident. Thomas York's widow? Emma York? She's dead. Shot in her home last night. And we have a witness who saw you leaving the property around the time of death." The words took a moment to sink in. When they did, Ella actually laughed, a short, bitter bark of disbelief. "You expect anyone to believe that? Don't matter what people believe. Matters what I say happened." He nodded to his men. "Ella Carter, you're under arrest for the murder of Emma York." Ella raised the rifle. "Don't come any closer." "You gonna shoot me, girl? Shoot all 7 of us?" Coulter took a step forward. "Because you better not miss. You better kill every last one of us with that Winchester. Because if even one of us is left standing, what we'll do to you will make you beg for death." Her finger trembled on the trigger. She could do it, could pull it, could try to take as many as possible. But Calder was inside, helpless. If she started a gunfight and lost, they'd kill him too. The rifle lowered. "Smart girl," Coulter said. They dragged her from the ranch in irons, threw her across a horse like a sack of grain, and rode back to town. People watched from windows and doorways as they hauled her to the jailhouse. Nobody intervened. Nobody even looked her in the eye. The cell was 8 feet by 6 feet, iron bars on 3 sides, stone wall on the 4th. There was a cot with a thin mattress that smelled like mildew and a bucket in the corner. That was all. Coulter stood outside the bars, looking pleased with himself. "Trial's tomorrow morning. By tomorrow night, you'll be decorating a rope." "I didn't kill Emma York." "I know." He said it casually, like commenting on the weather. "I shot her myself, put the gun right to her temple. She cried, begged me not to, offered me money, her body, anything. I did it anyway." Ella's hands clenched into fists. "Why?" "Because I needed someone to hang, and you're convenient. Your brother was getting too curious, asking questions about Sheriff Bridger's death. Couldn't have that. So I had him dealt with. But the town's getting restless, see? They need a reminder of what happens to troublemakers. Your execution will serve nicely." "You're insane." "I'm efficient." He turned to leave, then paused. "Oh, and that brother of yours? I sent men to the ranch with orders to finish what they started. By morning, he'll be as dead as you." He walked away whistling. Ella threw herself at the bars, screaming threats and obscenities until her voice gave out. Then she collapsed on the cot and tried to think. There had to be a way out, had to be. But the cell was solid, the bars unyielding, and she had nothing, no weapons, no tools, no help. Hours crawled past. Darkness fell. The jailhouse was silent except for the occasional footstep of a guard outside. She thought about Calder, about whether he was already dead, about whether he'd died without her there, without knowing she'd tried to save him. The thought made her chest ache. She thought about her parents, buried side by side on a hill overlooking the ranch. They'd built that place from nothing, turned desert into something that could sustain life. They'd raised their children to be strong, to stand up for what was right. And she'd failed them. Failed Calder. Failed the town that had once been good. Morning came too fast. They hauled her out of the cell at dawn, wrists bound, and marched her through the street toward the gallows that had been erected in the town square. Someone had worked through the night building it, fresh pine wood, rope already looped and waiting. The whole town had gathered. Coulter had probably made attendance mandatory. They stood in a loose crowd, faces drawn and hollow. Some people she'd known her whole life, some who'd bounced her on their knee when she was a child. None of them would look at her. "Good morning, Brimstone Crossing." Coulter stood on the gallows platform, arms spread wide like a preacher at a revival. "We're gathered here to witness justice. Ella Carter has been found guilty of murder most foul." Oh. "There was no trial," Ella shouted. One of the deputies hit her in the kidney. She went to her knees, gasping. Coulter continued as if she hadn't spoken. "And the sentence for murder is death by hanging. Let this serve as a reminder. The law applies to everyone. No one is above it." They dragged her up the steps. The platform was solid beneath her feet. She could see the whole town from up here. Every face, every coward, every person who'd chosen survival over courage. She didn't blame them, not really. Fear was a powerful thing. The executioner, one of Coulter's men wearing a black hood like this was some kind of official proceeding, slipped the noose over her head. The rope was rough against her throat. He tightened it. Coulter stepped close, speaking low enough that only she could hear. "Any last words? Begging? Crying? I do enjoy the crying." Ella met his eyes. Go to hell. He smiled. After you. He nodded to the executioner, who reached for the lever that would drop the platform beneath her feet. This was it. This was how it ended. Not fighting, not defending her home, but standing on a gallows built by a tyrant, convicted of a crime she didn't commit, dying to prove a point to a town too broken to care. The executioner's hand closed on the lever. Then a voice cut through the morning air, calm, steady, and impossible. I wouldn't do that if I were you. Every head turned. A man stood at the edge of the square, backlit by the rising sun. He was tall, lean, wearing a duster coat and a wide-brimmed hat pulled low. A rifle hung loose in his right hand. For a moment, he was just a silhouette, a shadow given form. Then he stepped forward into the light, and Ella's heart stopped for an entirely different reason. It was Calder, her brother, alive, walking, impossibly, undeniably real. The crowd erupted in whispers. Coulter's face went slack with shock before hardening into fury. That's impossible, he said. You should be dead? Calder's voice carried across the square, quiet, but somehow filling the space. Yeah, I've been hearing that a lot lately. He walked forward with slow, deliberate steps. Each footfall seemed to echo. The crowd parted before him like water. Coulter recovered his composure, snapping his fingers at his men. Kill him! Kill him now! 8 men reached for their guns. Calder moved. It happened faster than thought. The rifle came up smooth and natural, like it was part of his arm. The first shot took the nearest deputy in the shoulder, spinning him around. The second shot shattered another's gun hand before he could clear leather. The third and fourth came so close together they sounded like one, and 2 more men went down screaming. 4 shots. 4 men disabled. Less than 3 seconds. The remaining deputies froze, hands hovering over their weapons, but not completing the draw. They just watched something that shouldn't be possible. Calder worked the lever on his rifle, chambering a fresh round. The metallic sound was very loud in the sudden silence. Next man who moves gets it in the head instead of the hand, he said. Your choice. Nobody moved. Coulter's face had gone purple with rage. You dare! In my town! Your town? Calder's eyes, visible now beneath the hat brim, were cold and flat. This town doesn't belong to you. It never did. You just made them think it did. I have 8 men. You had 8 men. Now you have 4 men who can still hold a gun, and they're reconsidering their life choices. Calder took another step closer. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to tell your executioner to take that noose off my sister's neck. You're going to release her. And then you and I are going to have a conversation about justice. You're 1 man. Only takes 1 man to do the right thing. Calder's voice dropped lower. I died 3 days ago. We're close enough that it doesn't matter. Whatever you thought you killed out on that road, that's gone. What came back is something different, something with nothing left to lose. He raised the rifle, sighting down the barrel at Coulter's chest. Now take the noose off my sister. The executioner's hands trembled as he reached for the rope around Ella's neck. Coulter raised a hand to stop him. Don't, Coulter said. I give the orders here. Then give the right one, Calder said, or I'll drop you where you stand and give it myself. For a long moment, the town held its breath. 2 men locked in a contest of wills, neither willing to blink first. Then Coulter smiled, that same cold smile he'd worn when he first rode into town. You know what? Go ahead. Take the noose off. He gestured lazily. She's free. For now. The executioner fumbled with the rope, finally pulling it over Ella's head. She gasped, hands going to her throat, feeling the raw burn where it had pressed. Calder didn't lower the rifle. Cut her bonds. A deputy scrambled forward with a knife, slicing through the ropes around Ella's wrists. She stumbled down the gallows steps, legs shaking, and ran to her brother. Calder, how? Later, he said quietly. Then louder, to Coulter. You're going to leave this town, you and your men. Get your belongings and ride out before noon. Coulter laughed. Or what? You'll shoot me in front of all these witnesses? Make yourself a murderer? Self-defense, Calder said. You tried to hang an innocent woman. I stopped you. You drew on me. I had no choice. He tilted his head slightly. That's what everyone here will say, won't you? He looked at the crowd. Most people's eyes were on the ground, but a few, Martha Crane, Dr. Moss, a handful of others, met his gaze and nodded. Coulter's smile faded. You think this is over? You think you've won? I think, Calder said, that you have until noon to be gone. After that, I stop being reasonable. There are more of us than you know. I send word. I'll have 20 men here by nightfall. Then you better send word from far away, because if you're still here at noon, there won't be enough of you left to send word anywhere. Coulter's hand drifted toward his gun. Just an inch, just a slight movement. Calder's rifle tracked it. Please, he said softly. Give me a reason. The moment stretched, tension thick enough to cut. Then Coulter's hand moved away from his weapon. This isn't finished, he said. Yeah, Calder agreed. It is. You just don't know it yet. Coulter turned and walked away, his remaining men scrambling to follow. They disappeared into the jailhouse, gathering their belongings. The crowd stood motionless, unsure what to do, unsure if they could believe what they'd just witnessed. Calder lowered his rifle finally, turning to Ella. You all right? She punched him in the shoulder, hard. I thought you were dead. Moss said, he said you might not wake up. I woke up yesterday. Took me a while to remember who I was, where I was. He touched the back of his head where blood still matted his hair. Doc wanted me to stay in bed. I told him I had somewhere to be. You could barely stand and you came here? You're my sister. Where else would I be? Ella felt tears building, but fought them back. This wasn't over. Coulter was packing up, but he'd be back. Men like him always came back. As if reading her thoughts, Calder said quietly, He's not leaving. You told him? I know what I told him, and I know he's not the type to tuck tail and run. He'll make a show of packing, get everyone calm, then come back with more men. Calder's eyes were on the jailhouse. Probably attack tonight, while it's dark. Kill me, kill you, kill anyone who sided with us. Make an example that'll last generations. Then what do we do? Calder was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, We finish it. Finish how? By making sure he doesn't get the chance to come back. Ella understood. She saw it in her brother's eyes, the same cold determination she'd felt when she held that rifle on Coulter's men, the same understanding that sometimes survival meant being willing to cross lines you never wanted to cross. When? She asked. Tonight, he said, when they think they've got the advantage. He looked at her. I need you to trust me. I do. Even if what I do is ugly? Ella thought about the noose around her neck, about Emma York shot in her own home, about Sheriff Bridger and Thomas York and Danny the telegraph operator, about all the fear and death and suffering that had poisoned this town. Do what needs doing, she said. Calder nodded. Then he raised his voice, addressing the crowd that still lingered. Everyone go home. Lock your doors. Don't come out until morning, no matter what you hear. What about Coulter? Martha Crane called out. He'll kill you first chance he gets. Let him try, Calder said. The crowd dispersed slowly, reluctantly, people casting backward glances as they hurried to their homes and businesses. Within 10 minutes, the square was empty except for Calder and Ella. Tell me the plan, she said. There is no plan, Calder admitted. Just improvisation and prayer. That's not comforting. It's honest. He checked his rifle, counting rounds. They outnumber us. They're armed. They're vicious. Our only advantage is they think I'm scared. Are you? He looked at her. Terrified. But I'm more angry than scared, and anger's got a way of burning through fear when you need it to. They walked together back toward the ranch, leading their horses, saying little. The sun climbed higher, turning the desert into a furnace. By the time they reached home, it was past noon. Calder went straight to the bedroom where he'd been unconscious for 3 days. The sheets were still blood-stained. He stripped them off, then went to the dresser and pulled out a revolver their father had owned. A Colt Peacemaker, well-maintained, deadly at close range. Dad's gun, Ella said from the doorway. Figured he wouldn't mind me borrowing it. Calder checked the cylinder, fully loaded, and tucked it into his belt. You know how to shoot? You taught me. Then arm yourself. Rifle, pistol, whatever you can carry. When they come, and they will come, we need to be ready. They spent the afternoon preparing, boarding up windows, loading weapons, moving anything flammable away from the house. Not much of a plan, but better than nothing. As the sun began its descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and red, Calder stood at the window watching the road. "You ever think about running?" Ella asked. "Just saddling up and riding out, start over somewhere else?" "Every day since Mom and Dad died," Calder admitted. "But running doesn't fix anything, just moves the problem somewhere else. And eventually, you run out of places to run to." So we stand. So we stand. The sun dropped below the horizon. Darkness spread across the desert like spilled ink. Stars appeared, cold and distant. They waited. Midnight came and went. Ella was starting to think maybe she'd been wrong. Maybe Coulter really had left town, when Calder stiffened. "There," he whispered. She saw them too, shadows moving in the darkness. At least a dozen men on foot, approaching from multiple directions. They'd left their horses far enough away that the sound wouldn't carry. Smart, professional. "More than I expected," Calder said. "We can still run." "No." His voice was firm. "No more running." The shadows drew closer, 50 yards. 40. 30. Then a voice called out from the darkness. Coulter's voice, loud and mocking. "Calder Carter, you had your chance to walk away. Now you die in the dirt like the dog you are." Calder stood, rifle in hand, and kicked open the front door. "Come and get me," he shouted into the night. The world exploded into gunfire. Muzzle flashes lit up the night like lightning strikes. The first volley shattered the windows Calder and Ella had already boarded, splinters exploding inward. Ella hit the floor behind an overturned table, returning fire through the gaps. Her rifle kicked against her shoulder, the report deafening in the enclosed space. Calder was at the side window firing measured shots into the darkness. Each time he pulled the trigger, someone screamed. He wasn't wasting bullets, couldn't afford to. They were outnumbered at least 3-1, and every round had to count. "How many?" Ella shouted over the gunfire. "Too many!" Calder dropped behind cover as a fresh barrage tore through the boards. Wood chips rained down. A bullet passed so close to his head he felt the heat of it. Outside, Coulter's voice rang out. "Burn them out! I want this place ash by morning!" A bottle arced through the broken window, trailing flame. Kerosene. It shattered against the far wall, liquid fire spreading across the floor. Another bottle followed, then another. Within seconds, the interior was an inferno. Heat slammed into them like a physical force. Smoke filled the room, thick and choking. Ella coughed, eyes streaming, trying to find Calder through the haze. "Back door," he yelled, grabbing her arm. "Now!" They stumbled through the burning house, flames licking at their clothes. The heat was unbearable. Ella's lungs felt like they were being seared from the inside. They crashed through the back door into the relative cool of night air, gasping and coughing. 4 men were waiting. They opened fire immediately. Calder shoved Ella sideways, both of them rolling into the dirt as bullets chewed up the ground where they'd been standing. He came up firing, the peacemaker bucking in his hand. 2 men went down. The other 2 scattered, seeking cover. Ella's rifle was empty. She fumbled for the revolver at her belt, hands shaking, fingers slippery with sweat. One of the men rushed her, thinking she was defenseless. She got the gun clear just as he closed the distance and shot him point blank in the chest. The impact threw him backward. He hit the ground and didn't move. The 4th man broke and ran. Calder let him go, already moving. "The barn! We need distance and cover!" They ran across the open ground between the house and the barn, bullets kicking up dirt around their feet. The barn door was heavy, but Calder hauled it open with adrenaline-fueled strength. They dove inside, slamming it shut behind them. Darkness. The smell of hay and horses, their own ragged breathing. "You hit?" Calder asked. "No. You?" "Don't think so." He was reloading by feel, fingers finding cartridges in his belt and thumbing them into the cylinder. "Can't stay here. They'll burn this too." "Where do we go?" "Anywhere but here." As if in answer, torches appeared outside, moving toward the barn. Coulter had brought more men than Calder had thought possible. Where had they all come from? How long had he been planning this? The horses were stamping nervously in their stalls, spooked by the smell of smoke and gunfire. Calder moved to his mount, a big roan gelding named Rusty, and started working the saddle straps. His hands were steadier now. The initial shock had worn off, leaving behind cold calculation. "We ride out," he said. Fast and hard. Don't stop for anything. They'll chase us. Let them. In the dark, on unfamiliar ground, we've got the advantage. He finished with Rusty and moved to Ella's horse, a smaller mare. We know this desert. They don't. The barn doors exploded inward in a shower of splinters. Men poured through the opening, guns raised. Calder didn't hesitate. He fired from Rusty's saddle, the muzzle flash illuminating twisted faces and wild eyes. 2 men dropped. The others scattered. Ella was up on her mare, kicking it into motion. The horse bolted toward the ruined doors. Men dove out of the way. Someone grabbed for the reins, but Ella shot him in the arm and he fell screaming. Calder followed, Rusty thundering behind. They burst from the barn into chaos, men running, shooting, shouting. The ranch house was fully engulfed now, flames reaching toward the sky, sparks whirling up like hellish fireflies. A bullet creased Rusty's flank. The horse screamed and bucked but kept running. Calder held on, legs locked tight, returning fire over his shoulder. He hit someone. Didn't know who, didn't care, just needed to create enough confusion to escape. They hit the open desert at full gallop, leaving the burning ranch behind. Hoofbeats pounded behind them, pursuit already forming. Coulter wasn't letting them go. The desert at night was treacherous, gullies and rocks and cactus patches that could cripple a horse if you weren't careful. But Calder knew every inch of this ground. He'd ridden it since childhood, hunted it, explored it. He guided Rusty through a dry stream bed, then up a rocky slope that would slow the pursuers. Ella stayed close, trusting him to lead. Her mare was younger, faster, but less experienced on rough terrain. Once the horse stumbled and Ella nearly went flying, but she recovered, hauling the reins hard. Behind them, the pursuit was spreading out, trying to flank them. Smart. Coulter had military men with him, not just thugs. This was organized. "The canyon!" Calder shouted. "Head for the canyon!" Ella knew which one he meant, a narrow cut through the hills about 2 miles west. It was barely wide enough for 2 horses abreast, with high walls on both sides. Defensible. If they could reach it before being surrounded. They angled northwest, pushing the horses hard. Too hard. Rusty was breathing like a bellows, foam flecking his mouth. The wound on his flank was bleeding. He couldn't keep this pace much longer. Neither could Ella's mare. The younger horse was flagging, stumbling more often. Calder made a decision he hated. "Split up." "What?" "They can't chase both of us. You go for the canyon, I'll lead them south." "Calder, no. Do it." He veered off, angling away from her, firing shots into the air to draw attention. "Go!" He didn't wait to see if she obeyed. Half the pursuit peeled off after him, just as he'd hoped. That left maybe 6 men chasing Ella, better odds than 12 chasing both of them. Calder rode hard south, toward the broken badlands where the ground was nothing but ravines and crumbling stone. Dangerous in daylight, potentially fatal at night. But if he could lose them there, double back, reach the canyon from another direction, Rusty's front leg hit a hole. The horse went down hard, pitching forward. Calder had just enough time to kick free of the stirrups before 1,000 pounds of horseflesh crashed into the dirt. He hit the ground rolling, momentum carrying him away from the thrashing animal. Pain exploded in his ribs. Something cracked. He came to rest against a boulder, gasping, vision swimming. Rusty was screaming. The sound cut through Calder's dazed state like a knife. He dragged himself upright, saw the horse struggling to rise on a leg that bent wrong halfway down. Broken. No saving it. Riders were closing in. 4 of them, maybe 5. Hard to tell through the stars dancing in his vision. Calder drew the peacemaker and shot Rusty through the head. The horse dropped instantly, silent, better than leaving him to suffer. Then he turned and limped toward the rocks, every breath sending fire through his chest. Broken ribs for sure, maybe worse. He could taste blood. The riders reached Rusty's body and dismounted. Smart again. They weren't going to chase a wounded man on horseback in the dark. Too easy to ride into an ambush. They'd do this on foot. Calder found a depression in the rocks and wedged himself into it. Peacemaker in one hand, rifle in the other. Both guns were running low on ammunition. He had maybe 10 shots total left. Against 5 men. Math wasn't encouraging. He waited, controlling his breathing despite the pain. Slow in, slow out. Stay calm. Panic would get him killed faster than bullets. Footsteps crunched on gravel. Close. Getting closer. A shadow moved past his hiding spot. Calder let it go. Wait for the right moment. Another shadow, still waiting. The third man walked directly in front of the depression. Calder shot him in the back. The man fell forward without a sound. Chaos erupted. The other four opened fire at his muzzle flash, bullets screaming off the rocks around him. Calder pulled back deeper into the depression, making himself small. Stone chips peppered his face. He felt blood running down his cheek. "Got him pinned!" someone shouted. "Move up! Flank him!" Calder blind-fired around the edge of the rocks. Heard a yelp. Hit something, but probably not fatally. Return fire intensified. They were trying to keep him suppressed while they repositioned. He counted seconds, estimated movement, then rolled out of the depression firing both guns, one in each hand. Two men were coming around the left side. He shot the first one in the chest with the peacemaker, caught the second in the shoulder with the rifle. Both went down. That left two. Calder dove behind a different boulder as bullets traced his path. He landed badly on his injured ribs and nearly blacked out from the pain. Bit his tongue hard enough to taste blood, using the pain to stay conscious. "He's hurt," someone yelled. "I saw him favoring his left side." Great. Now they knew. Footsteps running. Coming fast. They were rushing him while he was weak. Calder rolled onto his back, both guns pointed at the gap between rocks. A man appeared, gun raised. Calder fired first. The man's head snapped back and he dropped. One left. The last man was smart. Didn't rush. Didn't make noise. Just waited. Calder's ribs were on fire. Each breath was agony. Blood was running down his side now. He'd torn something when he fell wrong. How much blood could a person lose and still fight? Guess he'd find out. Minutes passed. Or hours. Hard to tell. The pain made time elastic. Then he heard it. The faint scratch of a boot on stone. Behind him. The last man had circled around. Calder spun, bringing the rifle up. The man was there, outlined against the stars, gun leveled. They fired simultaneously. Calder's shot took the man in the chest. The man's shot hit Calder's rifle, shattering the stock and ripping it from his hands. Splinters drove into his palm. The man fell. Didn't get up. Calder slumped back against the rocks, breathing hard. 5 men down. But at what cost? He was bleeding, broken, armed now with just the peacemaker, and maybe 4 shots left. He needed to move. Needed to find Ella, make sure she'd made it to the canyon, but his body wasn't cooperating. When he tried to stand, his legs buckled. Not good. He forced himself up through sheer stubbornness, using the boulder for support. The world tilted sideways. He steadied himself, waiting for the dizziness to pass. Then he started walking. North. Toward where he'd sent Ella. Each step was a negotiation with his body, pain demanding he stop, will demanding he continue. The Badlands gave way to flatter ground. He could see the canyon's mouth in the distance, a darker shadow against dark hills. Maybe a mile. Might as well have been 100. Halfway there, his legs gave out completely. He went to his knees, then to his hands. Stayed there, head hanging, blood dripping into the dust. "Get up," he told himself. "Ella needs you." His body didn't care what Ella needed. Get up. He made it to his feet again somehow. Took another step. Another. It became mechanical. Left foot, right foot, ignore the pain, keep moving. He was 50 yards from the canyon when he heard horses. No strength left to run, barely enough to raise the peacemaker. He turned, swaying, trying to focus on the approaching riders. 3 of them. Moving fast. He thumb-cocked the revolver. 40 feet. 30. "Calder!" Ella's voice. He blinked, trying to process. That was Ella, on horseback, with 2 other riders flanking her. "Don't shoot!" she yelled. "They're with us!" The riders pulled up short. In the starlight, Calder recognized them. Martha Crane's son, Benjamin, and Dr. Moss's nephew, a kid named Peter who couldn't have been more than 20. "What?" Calder's voice came out as a croak. "What are you—" "Helping," Benjamin said, dismounting. He was a solid man, built like a blacksmith, which he was. "Town decided we've been cowards long enough." "More coming," Peter added. He was nervous, hands shaking, but he had a rifle and he'd shown up. That counted for something. Ella slid off her mare and caught Calder as his legs finally gave out for good. I've got you, Told you to go to the canyon, he managed. Since when do I listen to you? She was crying. He could hear it in her voice. You're bleeding. Yeah, notice that. Benjamin lifted Calder bodily and draped him across a saddle like a sack. Not dignified, but effective. We need to get him to Doc Moss. He's lost a lot of blood. No, Calder said. Coulter, have to stop. We'll stop him, Ella said. But first, we're getting you help. They rode for town, moving as fast as they dared with Calder barely conscious and draped over the horse. Somewhere along the way, he passed out. He woke to lamplight and pain. He was lying on something soft, a bed. Doc Moss was leaning over him, hands red with blood, face grave. Welcome back, the doctor said. Thought we'd lost you for a minute there. Ella? I'm here. She appeared at his side, face streaked with soot and tears. I'm right here. Coulter? Still out there, but things have changed. Calder tried to sit up. His ribs screamed in protest and he fell back, gasping. Don't, Moss said firmly. You've got 3 broken ribs, a punctured lung that I've patched as best I can, and you've lost enough blood to kill a smaller man. You need to rest. Can't. He'll come for the town, for you, everyone who helped. Let him come. Martha Crane stepped into view. Behind her were at least a dozen townspeople, all armed. We're done being afraid. You don't understand, Calder said. He has more men, military trained. You'll be slaughtered. Maybe, Benjamin said. But at least we'll die on our feet instead of our knees. Calder looked at Ella. She nodded. They know the risks. They're doing it anyway. It was insane, brave and stupid, and probably suicidal. But it was also the first time since Coulter arrived that the town had shown a spine. Then we do it smart, Calder said. Not a stand-up fight. We'll lose that. We need an ambush, something that takes away his numbers advantage. I'm listening, Martha said. Calder's mind was working despite the pain, despite the blood loss. How many men does he have left? We counted maybe 15 at your ranch, Peter said. You killed 5 in the Badlands. That leaves 10, plus Coulter makes 11. And how many of us? A quick count. 17 people, not counting Calder. Better odds than before, but still not great. Where's he now? Calder asked. Back in town, Ella said. Took over the hotel again. He thinks he's won. Thinks you're dead and I'm scattered to the wind. Good. Let him think that. Calder's eyes closed. He was so tired, but he forced them open again. Here's what we do. He laid out a plan. It wasn't complicated, couldn't be, with so few resources and so little time. But it played to their advantages, knowledge of the town, element of surprise, and the fact that Coulter had gotten cocky. It's risky, Martha said when he finished. Everything's risky, Calder replied. Question is whether we take the risk or let fear take everything. They spent what remained of the night preparing. Calder wanted to be part of it, but his body had other ideas. Every time he tried to stand, the world spun and Moss forced him back down. You've done your part, the doctor said. Let them do theirs. I started this. No, Coulter started this. You're just finishing it. Ella stayed with him while the others made ready. She'd cleaned up, changed clothes, but her eyes were haunted. You did good, Calder told her. Getting them organized, bringing them around. I didn't do anything. They saw you face down 12 men and live. That's what changed their minds. She took his hand. You scared them as much as you scared Coulter. I'm not scary. You came back from the dead and shot 5 men in the dark with broken ribs. Yeah, you're scary. He tried to laugh, but it turned into a cough that brought up blood. Moss appeared with a cloth, wiping his mouth, expression grim. The lung's still leaking, the doctor said quietly. I've done what I can, but how long? Calder asked. If you rest, if you don't exert yourself, if you're very lucky, maybe a few days, maybe a week. Moss met his eyes. I'm sorry. Ella made a sound like a wounded animal. No, we'll get you to a real hospital, somewhere with proper equipment. Oh, nearest real hospital is 2 days' ride, Calder said. I wouldn't make it 2 hours on a horse. Then we'll bring a doctor here. Ella. He squeezed her hand. It's okay. It's not okay. You can't just... I can't change it either. He coughed again. More blood. But I can make it count for something. Make sure Coulter doesn't get the chance to do this to anyone else. She was crying openly now. You're all I have left. That's not true. You've got this whole town. They'll need someone to lead them after. Someone strong. Someone who doesn't quit. He smiled, tasting copper. Someone like you. Dawn was coming. Calder could see gray light through the window. In an hour, maybe two, the plan would begin. He'd either live to see the outcome or die trying. Either way, it would be finished. Ella refused to leave his side. She sat there, holding his hand, not speaking, just being present. Calder was grateful for that. He'd spent 3 days unconscious, alone in his head. Having her there now mattered. Footsteps on the stairs. Benjamin appeared, face set. It's time. Coulter's men are moving. Calder tried to sit up again. This time he made it halfway before pain lanced through his chest, and he fell back gasping. You're in no condition, Moss started. Don't care. Calder grabbed the bed frame and hauled himself upright through sheer force of will. The room spun. He gritted his teeth and waited for it to stabilize. I'm not sitting this out. Calder, I'm not. He looked at Ella. Help me up. She hesitated, then moved to his side, supporting him as he got his feet under him. His legs shook but held. Small victories. Moss thrust a bottle into his hand. Laudanum. For the pain. Calder took a swallow. The bitter liquid burned going down. Within seconds, the edge came off the pain. Not gone, just distant, manageable. More, he said. That dose would put down a horse. Any more and you won't wake up. Then I better make this count. He walked to the window, each step careful and measured. Outside, the town was stirring, people moving into position, taking up stations behind windows, on rooftops, in doorways. An army of shopkeepers and farmers and people who'd been pushed too far. Coulter's men were gathered outside the hotel, mounted and armed. Calder counted 11. They looked confident. Why wouldn't they? They'd terrorized this town for months without real resistance. That was about to change. Calder checked the peacemaker. 3 rounds left. Not much, but it would have to do. His rifle was destroyed. The laudanum was making him pleasantly numb, which was dangerous but necessary. Where do you want me? He asked Benjamin. You should stay here. Where do you want me? Benjamin sighed. Main Street. Visible. Coulter thinks you're dead. Seeing you alive will rattle him. Good. They helped him down the stairs. Ella on one side, Benjamin on the other. Each step jarred his ribs, but the laudanum kept the pain at a distance. He felt disconnected from his body, like he was piloting it from somewhere else. The street was empty when they stepped outside. Early morning sun slanted between buildings, painting everything gold. It would have been beautiful if not for what was coming. Calder positioned himself in the middle of Main Street, 50 yards from where Coulter's men were gathered. He sent Ella and Benjamin away, didn't want them near him when the shooting started. Then he waited. It didn't take long. One of Coulter's men spotted him and shouted. Heads turned. Horses stamped nervously. Vain Coulter himself stepped out of the hotel, and even from this distance, Calder could see the shock on his face. You're dead, Coulter called out. I saw the reports. 5 men confirmed the kill. They were wrong, Calder said. His voice carried in the morning quiet. Impossible. Seems to be my specialty lately. Coulter's shock was giving way to anger. Doesn't matter. You're one man. You can barely stand. Look at you. You're bleeding through your shirt. Calder looked down. Blood was indeed seeping through the bandages Moss had wrapped around his chest. Flesh wound. You think you can stop me? You think this town has suddenly grown a spine? I think, Calder said, that you're about to find out. He raised his voice. Now! Windows shattered up and down Main Street as townspeople opened fire. The carefully planned ambush sprung from a dozen directions at once. Coulter's men, caught in the open, scrambled for cover. 2 went down immediately. A third took a bullet in the leg and fell screaming from his horse. Chaos erupted, horses bolted, men dove behind water troughs and hitching posts and anything else that might stop a bullet. Return fire was sporadic, disorganized. Calder walked forward, peacemaker raised. One of Coulter's men emerged from behind a barrel, gun coming up. Calder shot him in the chest. The man folded. 2 rounds left. More gunfire. The air was thick with smoke and the smell of black powder. Someone was screaming, couldn't tell who. A bullet whined past Calder's ear. He kept walking. Each step was floating, dreamlike. The laudanum had him now, had wrapped him in cotton wool. He felt invincible and fragile all at once. Another of Coulter's men broke from cover, trying to reach his panicked horse. Martha Crane shot him from a second-story window. He went down hard. The tide was turning. Coulter's men were being decimated, caught between withering fire from the buildings and a man who walked toward them like death itself. Coulter himself had taken cover behind an overturned wagon. "Fall back," he was shouting. "Regroup at the livery." His men tried. Most didn't make it. The townspeople had found their courage and they weren't letting go. When the smoke cleared, 6 of Coulter's men were down. 3 more were fleeing on horseback, racing out of town. That left 2 still fighting, plus Coulter himself. And Calder, standing in the middle of the street, swaying slightly, blood running down his side. 1 round left in this peacemaker. Coulter rose from behind the wagon, a hostage in front of him. Danny, the telegraph operator who'd been beaten months ago. The kid's face was purple with bruises, old and new. Coulter had a gun pressed to his temple. "Back off," Coulter shouted. "All of you, back off, or the kid dies." The shooting stopped. The street went quiet except for the moaning of wounded men. Calder kept walking. "I said back off!" Coulter pressed the gun harder against Danny's head. The kid whimpered. "I'll kill him! I swear I'll—" "Then do it," Calder said. He was close now, maybe 20 feet. "Kill him. Add 1 more murder to the list. See if it changes anything." "You're bluffing." "Am I?" Calder raised the peacemaker, sighting down the barrel. His hand was steady despite everything. "You've killed how many people?" "Sheriff Bridger, Thomas York, Emma York. How many others? Danny here would just be 1 more. Stay back." "But here's the thing." Calder took another step, 15 feet. "You're not going to kill him, because the second you pull that trigger, you lose your shield. And then I put my last bullet right between your eyes." Coulter's face was pale, slick with sweat. "You can't make that shot. Not in your condition. Only one way to find out." 10 feet now, close enough to see the fear in Coulter's eyes. The man had built an empire on fear, had ruled through terror and violence, but now he was the one who was afraid. "Let him go," Calder said quietly. "Face me like a man. I'll kill him." "No, you won't." They stood there frozen. A tableau. The tyrant and his hostage, the dying man with 1 bullet left, the entire town holding its breath. Then Danny moved. The kid was young and scared, but he was also brave. He threw his weight backward, slamming into Coulter, throwing off his aim. The gun went off, but the bullet went wide. Calder fired. 1 shot. The last one. Across 15 feet, through smoke and pain and laudanum haze. The bullet took Vain Coulter in the throat. He staggered backward, hands going to the wound, blood sheeting between his fingers. He tried to speak, but only bubbles came out. Then his legs gave way and he collapsed. Danny scrambled clear, sobbing with relief and fear. Calder lowered the peacemaker. The cylinder was empty. He'd bet everything on 1 shot, and it had paid off. The remaining 2 of Coulter's men threw down their weapons and raised their hands. "We're done," one of them said. "We're done. We surrender." Calder nodded. Then his own legs gave out, and he fell. The world spun. Sky and ground traded places. He hit the dirt hard, fresh pain breaking through the laudanum. Hands on him. Voices. Ella's face hovering above his, saying something he couldn't quite hear. The sun was very bright. Beautiful, really. When was the last time he'd just looked at the sky? "Calder! Calder, stay with me!" He tried to tell her it was okay, that he'd done what needed doing, that she'd be fine without him, but his mouth wasn't working right. Darkness crept in at the edges of his vision. Not scary, kind of peaceful, actually. He let it take him. Waking up felt like clawing through thick mud. Calder became aware of things in fragments. The smell of clean linen, the weight of blankets, voices murmuring somewhere distant. Pain came next, sharp and insistent, centered in his chest but radiating outward like cracks in glass. He tried to open his eyes. The light was too bright. He turned his head and immediately regretted it as nausea surged. "Easy." A hand on his shoulder, gentle but firm. "Don't try to move yet. Doc Moss." Calder recognized the voice. He forced his eyes open despite the light, blinking until the room came into focus. He was back in the same bed where he'd been before, in the room above Moss's office. Afternoon sun slanted through the window. "How long?" His voice came out as a rasp. 2 days. Moss appeared in his field of vision, looking tired but relieved. "You've been in and out, mostly out. We weren't sure you'd make it." "Coulter? Dead. You got him clean through the throat. He bled out in under a minute." Calder processed this. The last thing he remembered was pulling the trigger, then falling. Everything after was darkness. "His men?" "2 surrendered. We're holding them in the jail. 3 escaped on horseback. Haven't been seen since. The rest are in the ground." Moss checked his pulse, counting silently. The town buried Coulter in an unmarked grave outside the cemetery. Nobody wanted him near decent people, even in death. And us? Our people. Benjamin took a bullet in the shoulder, but he'll be fine. Martha Crane's son Peter got grazed across the ribs, more scared than hurt. A few others have minor wounds. No one died. Moss set Calder's wrist down gently. "You saved a lot of lives by making yourself the target, drew their fire while everyone else got in position." Calder hadn't thought of it that way. He'd just done what seemed necessary at the time. "Where's Ella?" "Right here." She stepped into view from the corner where she'd apparently been sitting. Her eyes were red-rimmed, face drawn. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. "You scared me half to death." "Sorry. Don't apologize, just don't do it again." She pulled a chair closer and sat down hard, like her legs had given out. "Doc says your lung is healing, slowly, but healing. The ribs too. You might actually live through this." "Might?" "Nothing's guaranteed," Moss said. "You lost a dangerous amount of blood. Your body's been through trauma that would kill most men. But you're young and stubborn, and that counts for something." He picked up a bottle from the side table. "I'm keeping you on laudanum for the pain, but smaller doses. You were half mad with it during the fight. Felt pretty clear to me. You walked into the middle of a gunfight with a punctured lung and broken ribs. That's not clear thinking. That's the drug convincing you you're invincible." Moss's expression was stern. "You're lucky you didn't die in the street." Ella made a sound halfway between a laugh and a sob. "Lucky. That's one word for it." Calder reached for her hand. She took it, gripping tight like she was afraid he'd disappear. "We won," he said. "We survived," she corrected. "That's not the same thing." "Close enough." They sat in silence for a while. Outside, Calder could hear the town, voices, wagon wheels, the normal sounds of life continuing. It sounded different than before. Less muffled, less afraid. "What happens now?" he asked. "Now we rebuild," Moss said. "The town needs a sheriff. Real one this time, not some federally appointed tyrant. We've sent word to Santa Fe, explained what happened. Should get a response in a week or 2. "And until then?" "Until then, we're managing ourselves. Martha Crane's been coordinating things. She's got a good head for organization." Moss stood, gathering his instruments. "The 2 men we captured are talking. Turns out Coulter wasn't working alone. He had backing from someone bigger, someone who wanted control of this territory." That got Calder's attention despite his exhaustion. "Who?" "They don't know. Coulter kept that close to his chest. But whoever it was provided weapons, money, men when needed. This wasn't just some opportunistic power grab. It was planned." Ella's grip on Calder's hand tightened. "You think they'll send someone else?" "Maybe. But it won't be easy like it was with Coulter. This town's not the same as it was 3 months ago." Moss headed for the door. "I'll let you 2 talk. Calder, you need rest. Actual rest, not charging into gunfights. I'll be back to check on you in a few hours." He left, closing the door quietly behind him. Ella pulled her chair closer. "You really scared me," she said again, quieter this time. "When you fell, when you stopped breathing, I thought I'd lost you." "I stopped breathing for about 30 seconds. Moss got you back, but..." She wiped at her eyes. "I can't lose you, Calder. You're all the family I have left. You've got the town now. Heard you've been helping Martha organize the rebuilding. That's not the same." "No, but it's something." He shifted, trying to get comfortable. His ribs protested, but he managed to prop himself up slightly. "Tell me what I missed." 2 days is a long time." Ella settled back, gathering her thoughts. The morning after the fight, people started coming out of their homes. Really coming out, not just scurrying around trying to stay invisible. The Parson family opened their store again. The church held a service, first one in weeks that Coulter's men didn't disrupt. It was like the town took a breath for the first time in months. What about the ranch? Her expression darkened. Burned to the foundation. Everything's gone. The house, the barn, most of the outbuildings. Some of the cattle scattered into the desert. Benjamin and a few others are rounding them up, getting them penned at his property for now. Calder absorbed this. The ranch where he'd grown up, where his parents had built a life from nothing, reduced to ash. He should have felt more about it, but mostly he just felt tired. We'll rebuild. With what money? We lost everything. Then we'll start over. That's what people do. You make it sound easy. It won't be easy, but it's possible. That's enough. Ella studied his face. You're different. Since you woke up from that coma, you're, I don't know, harder, maybe? Or just less afraid. I died, Calder said simply. Or close enough that the difference doesn't matter. When you've been that close to the edge, everything else seems less important. Fear, pain, loss, they're still there, but they're not as big as they used to be. That doesn't sound healthy. Probably isn't, but it kept us alive. She couldn't argue with that. The town wants to give you something, a reward or a ceremony or, I don't know. They want to honor what you did. I don't want to be honored. I want to heal and rebuild and forget any of this happened. You saved them, Calder. You gave them their town back. They need to acknowledge that. What they need is to acknowledge they saved themselves. I just lit the match. They're the ones who burned it all down. He coughed, tasting blood. Not as much as before, but still there. Don't let them make me into some kind of hero. I'm not. I was just angry and desperate and too stubborn to quit. Maybe that's what a hero is. Before Calder could respond, footsteps thundered up the stairs. The door burst open, and Benjamin barged in, out of breath and wild-eyed. We've got a problem, he said. Ella was on her feet immediately. What kind of problem? Riders, coming from the east. Maybe 20 of them, moving fast. Calder's stomach dropped. Coulter's reinforcements. That's what we're thinking. Martha's getting everyone armed and positioned, but if they're as organized as Coulter's first group... Benjamin didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. How long until they arrive? Calder asked, already trying to swing his legs out of bed. What are you doing? Ella pushed him back down. You can barely stand. Don't have a choice. If that's who I think it is, they're coming for blood. They'll burn this town to the ground as payback for what we did to Coulter. Then we'll fight them without you, Ella said firmly. You're in no condition. She's right, Benjamin said. You've done enough. Let us handle this. Calder looked between them, saw the determination in their faces. 2 days ago, these people had been terrified, broken, barely able to stand up for themselves. Now they were ready to fight without him. Maybe he really had lit a match. Fine, he said, settling back against the pillows. But I want updates. Every 10 minutes, someone comes and tells me what's happening. Deal. Benjamin was already heading for the door. Ella, you coming? She hesitated, torn between staying with Calder and helping defend the town. Calder made the decision for her. Go. They need you more than I do right now. She leaned down and kissed his forehead. Don't die while I'm gone. Wasn't planning on it. Then she was gone, following Benjamin down the stairs. Calder heard them exit the building, heard shouting in the street as people mobilized. He tried to relax, to let his body heal like Moss had ordered, but his mind wouldn't settle. 20 riders. That was more than Coulter had brought initially. If they were well armed and organized, the town might not survive this. He looked at the window, could probably make it over there if he was careful, see what was happening. No. He'd promised to rest, had to trust the others to handle this. The minutes crawled by. Each one felt like an hour. Calder counted his heartbeats, listening to the sounds from outside. Voices calling out positions. Wagon being moved to create barriers. The metallic sound of rifles being loaded. Footsteps on the stairs. Doc Moss appeared, carrying his medical bag. I thought you might try to get up, he said. So I'm here to make sure you don't. I'm staying put. Uh-huh, and I'm the King of England. Moss settled into the chair Ella had vacated. Those riders will be here in 30 minutes, maybe less. Martha's got people stationed on every rooftop, behind every barrel. We're as ready as we're going to be. And if they're too strong, Then we fall back and regroup. Nobody's planning to make a last stand. We learned from Coulter. Fighting smart beats fighting brave. Another 10 minutes passed. Then they heard it. The thunder of hoofbeats approaching. Lots of them, moving fast. Calder tensed. That's them. Moss went to the window, peering down at the street. His expression was unreadable. They're stopping at the edge of town, not charging in. That's odd. What are they doing? Just sitting there. One rider's moving forward, alone, unarmed, looks like. This didn't make sense. If they were here for revenge, why announce themselves? Why send a single unarmed rider? Calder couldn't take it anymore. He pushed himself upright despite Moss's protests, got his feet under him, and staggered to the window. The world tilted, but he grabbed the frame and held on until his vision cleared. Below, in the middle of Main Street, a single rider sat on a gray horse. The man was older, maybe 50, with silver hair and a weathered face. He wore a clean white shirt and a black vest. No gun visible. Behind him, spread in a loose line at the town's edge, 20 armed men waited on horseback. But they weren't advancing, just waiting. The man in white raised his hands, showing they were empty. "My name is Marcus Reeves," he called out. His voice carried clearly in the tense silence. "I'm a federal marshal out of Santa Fe. I'm here about reports of trouble in Brimstone Crossing." Martha Crane stepped into view, rifle raised. "We sent those reports 2 days ago. How'd you get here so fast?" "We were already on our way. We'd heard rumors about Vain Coulter operating outside legal authority. Came to investigate." Reeves gestured at the town. "Looks like you handled it yourselves." "We did what we had to do." "I'm sure you did. May I approach?" "I'd like to discuss the situation." Martha looked up at Moss's window. The doctor waved her on. What choice did they have? She lowered her rifle slightly and nodded. Reeves dismounted and walked forward slowly, hands still visible. He stopped 10 feet from Martha. "I need to know what happened here, everything, from the beginning." Martha told him. The whole story, Sheriff Bridger's murder, Coulter's arrival, the months of terror, the killings, the final confrontation. She didn't sugarcoat it. When she got to the part about Calder's last stand, Reeves's expression shifted to something like respect. "This Calder Carter," he said. "Where is he now?" "Upstairs. Recovering. He took a bullet to the lung, broke half his ribs, and lost enough blood to kill a horse. But he's alive. I'd like to speak with him. He needs rest." "I'm fine," Calder called down from the window. His voice was weak but audible. "I'll talk." 5 minutes later, Marcus Reeves was standing in Calder's room, hat in hand, studying the injured man with sharp eyes. "You look like hell," Reeves said. "Feel worse." Calder had made it back to the bed, but sitting upright was taking all his concentration. "You're really a federal marshal?" Reeves pulled out a badge. Genuine, not like the fake one Coulter had flashed. 20 years in service. I've seen a lot of towns go bad, but what happened here? He shook his head. Coulter was a wanted man. Multiple warrants for murder, robbery, assault. We'd been tracking him for 6 months. Lost his trail in Arizona, then picked up rumors he'd headed this way. Why didn't you get here sooner? Would have, if we'd known exactly where he was. These territories are big, and we're spread thin. By the time we got solid intelligence placing him in Brimstone Crossing, you'd already put him down. Reeves sat in the chair studying Calder. "I need to know. Was it a fair fight? Does it matter?" "For the record, yes. I've got to file a report. If you murdered him in cold blood, even if he deserved it, that's something I have to address." Calder thought back to those final moments. Coulter with Danny as a shield, the standoff, the kid throwing himself backward. "He had a hostage, threatened to kill him. The hostage got loose and I took the shot. That fair enough for your report? There are witnesses who'll confirm this?" "Half the town saw it." Reeves nodded slowly. "Then as far as I'm concerned, you acted in defense of another's life. That's justified in any court." He leaned forward. "But I need you to understand something. Coulter might have been working alone here, but he wasn't alone in general. He had connections. People who funded him, who benefited from the chaos he created. The prisoners mentioned someone bigger," Calder said. "Someone who wanted control of this territory." "Did they give a name?" "No. Said Coulter never told them." "That's unfortunate, because whoever it was, they're not going to be happy about losing their foothold here." Reeves stood, pacing to the window. "I'm leaving a deputy here, man named Carson. Good man, honest. He'll serve as sheriff until the town's ready to elect its own. I'm also posting 2 of my men here for the next month. If anyone comes looking to finish what Coulter started, they'll find federal resistance waiting. Relief washed through Calder. Real law enforcement, real protection. Thank you. Don't thank me. You did the hard part. Reeves turned back to face him. I'm also recommending you for a commendation. What you did here, standing up to Coulter, rallying the town, that takes a special kind of courage. I don't want a commendation. I just want to rebuild my ranch and live quietly. Unfortunately, you don't get to choose how history remembers you. Word's going to spread about what happened here, about the man who came back from death to save his town. That's the kind of story people tell. Reeves pulled on his hat. My advice? Let them tell it. Stories have power. They inspire people. Maybe someone else in another town facing another Coulter will hear your story and find the courage to stand up. Calder hadn't thought about it that way. He'd been so focused on survival, on protecting Ella and the town, that the larger implications hadn't occurred to him. I'll think about it, he said finally. You do that. In the meantime, heal up. You look like you're about to fall over. Reeves headed for the door, then paused. One more thing. The prisoners you're holding, I'll take them off your hands. They'll stand trial in Santa Fe for their part in Coulter's crimes. Should hang by the end of the month. Good. After Reeves left, Calder lay back and closed his eyes. The conversation had exhausted him, but beneath the exhaustion was something else. Hope, maybe. The sense that the worst was truly over. Ella returned an hour later, bringing food. Moss says you need to eat. Build your strength back. Not hungry. Don't care. Eat anyway. She set the tray on his lap, broth, bread, some kind of stewed meat. Simple fare, but it smelled good. Calder managed a few spoonfuls of broth before his stomach protested. Can't. Try the bread then. He nibbled at it to appease her. Reeves seems like a straight shooter. Better than Coulter, anyway. He's already organizing things, getting the town set up with proper legal structures. Says we need a mayor, a town council, all the official things we've been lacking. Ella took the tray when it became clear he wasn't eating more. He wants to talk to you again tomorrow. Something about a formal statement. Great. More talking. You're the hero. You've got to do hero things. I'm not a hero. Tell that to the town. They're already planning a memorial for the people who died under Coulter's rule. Sheriff Bridger, Thomas, and Emma York, all the others. They want you to speak at the dedication. Calder groaned. I'm not giving a speech. You're giving a speech. The town needs it. They need to see you standing in front of them, alive and whole, showing them that evil doesn't always win. She softened her tone. I know you don't want the attention, but sometimes we do things not because we want to, but because they need doing. She had him there. When's the dedication? Week from now. Gives you time to heal up a bit more. Fine, but I'm keeping it short. However long you want. She stood, picking up the tray. I'm going to help Martha with the supply inventory. You should sleep. Where are you staying? Martha's put me up at the hotel. Free of charge, she says. Least she can do for what we did. Ella paused at the door. The ranch is gone, Calder. All of it. But we're still here. We'll figure out the rest. After she left, Calder lay in the dimness and thought about the future. The ranch could be rebuilt. Would be hard work, but possible. The cattle could be gathered and the herd built back up. They had youth on their side and stubbornness, but he wasn't the same person who'd owned that ranch before. Something had changed in him during those 3 days of unconsciousness, during the fight with Coulter, during that final moment when he'd pulled the trigger knowing he might not survive. Death had touched him and let him go, and he'd come back different. Sleep took him eventually, deep and dreamless. The week passed in a blur of recovery. Moss checked on him daily, changing bandages, monitoring his breathing, adjusting the laudanum doses. Slowly, painfully, Calder's body began to heal. The ribs hurt less, the lungs stopped leaking, the blood loss was replaced through rest and food. By the day of the dedication, he could walk without assistance and breathe without feeling like someone was stabbing him. Progress. The memorial was simple. A stone marker in the cemetery with the names of everyone who'd died during Coulter's reign. The whole town gathered. People Calder hadn't seen in months emerged from their homes, dressed in their Sunday best. Marshal Reeves was there, along with Deputy Carson and the two federal men who'd be staying. Benjamin was there with his arm in a sling. Martha Crane stood near the front, dignified and composed. Dr. Moss hovered nearby, probably ready to catch Calder if he collapsed. Ella stood beside him, a steadying presence. When it came time for Calder to speak, he stepped forward. His prepared remarks, carefully crafted by Martha to be proper and inspirational, sat folded in his pocket. He left them there. "I'm not good with words," he started. "Never have been. So I'll keep this simple. These people," he gestured at the memorial stone, "they deserved better than what happened to them. Sheriff Bridger was a good man who died trying to protect this town. Thomas York stood up for what was right and paid for it. Emma York was innocent. The others," he paused, gathering his thoughts, "they all deserve to live full lives. They didn't. That's not fair. It's not right. But it's what happened." The crowd was silent, listening. "What we can do," Calder continued, "is make sure they didn't die for nothing. We can build a town worth protecting. We can stand up when evil shows its face instead of looking away. We can remember that fear only has power if we give it power." He looked at the faces watching him, people he'd known his whole life, people who'd found their courage when it mattered most. "You all saved this town. Not me. You. When you picked up your rifles and stood your ground, when you decided you'd rather die free than live afraid, that's when Coulter lost. I just helped finish what you started." He stepped back. Done. There was supposed to be more. Martha had written 3 pages, but that was all he had in him. The crowd was quiet for a moment. Then someone started clapping. Others joined in. Soon the whole gathering was applauding, and Calder felt his face flush with embarrassment. After the ceremony, people came up to shake his hand, thank him, tell him their stories. He listened, accepted their gratitude, and tried not to think about how much his ribs hurt from standing so long. Finally, as the sun began to set, the crowd dispersed. Calder found himself alone at the memorial with Ella. "You did good," she said. "I said maybe 50 words. They were the right 50 words." She linked her arm through his. "Come on. Moss wants you back in bed before you tear something loose." They walked slowly back toward the doctor's office. The town around them was alive with activity. Stores open, people talking on the street, children playing without fear. It looked like a normal town again. Felt like one. "I've been thinking," Ella said as they walked, "about the ranch, about rebuilding." "Yeah?" "I want to do it different this time. Not just cattle, maybe horses too, or crops. Something that doesn't put all our hopes in one basket." "Makes sense. And I want to build the house bigger, have room for, she hesitated, "for people, if they need it. The town doesn't have anywhere for people to go if they're in trouble. Maybe we could be that place." Calder looked at his sister. She'd always been the fiery one, the one who spoke her mind and charged forward. But there was something else in her now, too, a sense of purpose, of wanting to build something meaningful. "I like that," he said. "A ranch that's also a refuge. Mom and Dad would approve." "You think so?" "I know so." They reached Moss's office. The doctor was waiting, arms crossed, looking stern. "You were supposed to be gone an hour tops. It's been 3. "People wanted to talk," Calder said. "And you should have told them you're still recovering from near-fatal injuries. Inside. Now." Calder obeyed, climbing the stairs slowly. His ribs were definitely protesting now. Moss had been right about the time limit. Back in bed, with laudanum dulling the pain and Moss fussing over his bandages, Calder let himself relax. The memorial was done. The town was safe. Reeves and his men were here to ensure it stayed that way. For the first time in months, he could rest without waiting for the next crisis. "How much longer?" he asked Moss. "Before you're fully healed? Months? Maybe a year before you're back to full strength." The doctor finished with the bandages and stepped back. "But you'll live. Barring complications or you doing something stupid, you'll live a long life." "What counts as stupid?" "Getting shot, riding a horse before your ribs are healed, lifting anything heavier than a book. Basically everything you're probably planning to do as soon as I let you out of this bed." Calder smiled despite himself. "I'll be careful." "You better be. I didn't put all this work into keeping you alive just so you can undo it." Ella stayed for a while after Moss left, talking about her plans for the new ranch. Calder half listened, content to let her enthusiasm wash over him. She'd be okay. She was strong, stronger than she gave herself credit for. When she finally left for the night, Calder lay in the darkness and thought about everything that had happened. 3 months ago, this had been a normal town. Then Coulter came and everything fell apart. But they'd rebuilt. Not just the buildings and businesses, but something more fundamental, their sense of worth, their willingness to stand up. Maybe that was the real victory. Not killing Coulter, but showing people they didn't have to accept tyranny. That one person standing up could inspire others to stand too. His eyes grew heavy. Sleep was coming, pulling him down into its depths. He let it take him, finally feeling safe enough to let go completely. Tomorrow, he'd start planning the rebuild. Tomorrow, he'd figure out where to go from here. But tonight, he just slept. 3 weeks after the dedication, Calder was finally released from Moss's care with strict instructions to take it easy. He ignored them almost immediately. The morning after his release, he and Ella rode out to what remained of the ranch. The ruins were worse than he'd imagined. The house was nothing but charred timbers and ash, still faintly warm when he put his hand to them. The barn had collapsed in on itself. Even the well had debris in it that would need clearing. Ella stood beside him, surveying the destruction with her hands on her hips. We could find another place. Start fresh somewhere, the memories aren't all burned. This is our land. Mom and Dad are buried on that hill. Calder gestured to the small cemetery plot visible in the distance. We're not abandoning them. Then we rebuild. Then we rebuild, he agreed. They started that day. Benjamin brought lumber from town, donated by folks who wanted to help. Peter showed up with tools and willing hands. Martha Crane sent food. Even Marshal Reeves stopped by, spending an afternoon helping clear debris while his deputies kept watch in town. The work was hard. Calder's ribs protested every time he lifted something heavy, which was constantly. Moss had been right about taking it easy, but easy wasn't going to get the ranch rebuilt before winter. By the end of the first week, they had the debris cleared and the foundation for a new house laid out. It was bigger than the old one, just like Ella wanted, room for people who might need refuge. The thought of turning their home into a sanctuary felt right somehow, like honoring what they'd survived by helping others survive too. The town was changing too. Deputy Carson had proven himself capable and fair, settling disputes without resorting to violence, treating everyone with equal respect regardless of their station. The 2 federal men Reeves had left behind, Jenkins and O'Hara, patrolled regularly, their presence a reminder that Brimstone Crossing was under legitimate protection now. A town council formed, with Martha Crane elected as mayor by unanimous vote. She'd protested, saying she was too old and too ornery, but the vote stood. Her first act was establishing a fund for rebuilding. Anyone who'd lost property to Coulter's reign could draw from it. Calder refused the money when Martha offered it. Give it to someone who needs it more. We'll manage. Your pride's going to be the death of you, Martha said. My pride's what kept me alive this long. She couldn't argue with that, so she redirected the funds to Danny, the telegraph operator, who'd lost everything when Coulter destroyed the telegraph office. The kid cried when he got the news, overwhelmed by the town's generosity. Life was finding its rhythm again. Slow, careful, but moving forward. Then, 4 weeks after Coulter's death, a stranger rode into town. Calder was in the general store buying nails when word spread. He saw people's faces change, fear creeping back in, that old familiar terror. His hand went instinctively to his hip, but he'd left the peacemaker at the ranch. Still couldn't wear a gun without his ribs screaming. Who is it? He asked the store owner. Don't know. Well-dressed man on a fancy horse, asking questions about what happened to Coulter. Calder's stomach tightened. This was what Reeves had warned about. Whoever had backed Coulter coming to investigate their investment's failure. He left the nails and headed for the street. Ella was already there, standing outside the hotel with Benjamin and a dozen others. Deputy Carson was talking to the stranger, hand resting on his gun. The stranger was exactly as described, well-dressed in a tailored suit that must have cost more than most people in town made in a year. His horse was a beautiful chestnut thoroughbred, probably worth even more. He sat easy in the saddle, looking around with calm, calculating eyes. I'm simply asking questions, the stranger was saying, trying to understand what transpired here. Mr. Coulter was an associate of my employer, and his death is troubling. Your employer got a name? Carson asked. I'm not at liberty to say, but I assure you this is merely fact-finding. No one is being accused of anything. Calder stepped forward. The The stranger's eyes immediately found him, sizing him up. "You must be Calder Carter. I've heard quite a bit about you." "Nothing good, I hope." The stranger smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "On the contrary, the man who killed Vain Coulter in a fair fight. Quite impressive considering your injuries at the time." He dismounted smoothly. "My name is Silas Webb. I represent certain business interests that had dealings with Mr. Coulter." "What kind of business interests?" "The profitable kind. Mr. Coulter was meant to secure this territory for development, mining operations primarily. There are valuable mineral deposits in these hills that my employer wishes to exploit." "Exploit," Ella said flatly. "That's an honest word for it, at least." Webb turned his attention to her. "Miss Carter, I presume. My condolences on the loss of your home, though I understand you're rebuilding. Commendable resilience." "What do you want?" Calder asked, cutting through the pleasantries. "As I said, information. I need to report back to my employer about what happened here. The official version is that Mr. Coulter exceeded his authority and was killed in self-defense. Is that accurate?" "He was a murderer and a tyrant," Carson said. "He got what he deserved." "I'm not disputing that. Simply confirming the facts." Webb pulled out a small notebook and pencil. "How many of Mr. Coulter's men survived?" "2 in custody, awaiting trial in Santa Fe. 3 escaped. The rest are dead." Webb made notes. "And the townspeople? Any casualties during the final confrontation?" "Minor injuries. No deaths." More notes. "Remarkable. Mr. Coulter was quite skilled. To defeat him with minimal losses suggests either extraordinary luck or extraordinary planning." "Both," Calder said. "And the fact that we were fighting for our homes while his men were just following orders. Makes a difference." "I'm sure it does." Webb closed his notebook. "Thank you for your cooperation. I'll include this in my report." "And then what?" Ella asked. "Your employer going to send someone else to finish what Coulter started?" Webb looked genuinely surprised. "Finish? Miss Carter, this operation is concluded. Mr. Coulter's failure has convinced my employer that this territory is not worth further investment. Too much resistance, too little return. We're withdrawing entirely." Relief rippled through the watching crowd. People had been holding their breath, waiting for the other shoe to drop. Now it seemed there was no other shoe. But Calder wasn't convinced. Something about Webb's demeanor felt off, too smooth, too practiced. "You came all this way just to ask questions and leave?" he said. "I came to assess whether salvaging the operation was feasible. It's not." Webb swung back into his saddle. "My employer will write off the losses and move on to more promising ventures. You have my word. No one else is coming." He tipped his hat and turned his horse toward the edge of town. Calder watched him go, that uneasy feeling persisting. Webb's words were reassuring, but his eyes had been cold, calculating. The eyes of a man who measured everything in terms of profit and loss. "That was easier than expected," Benjamin said once Webb was out of sight. "Too easy," Calder muttered. "You think he's lying?" Carson asked. "I think he's telling us what we want to hear. Whether it's true or not, I don't know." Ella touched his arm. "Maybe we should just accept the good news and move on." "Maybe." But Calder couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. That night he couldn't sleep. His ribs were bothering him. He'd overdone it during the day, lifting timber he should have left to someone else. But more than the physical pain, his mind wouldn't settle. He kept replaying the conversation with Webb. The man's words had been perfect, his manner professional. But something underneath felt wrong. Like watching a play where the actors were hitting all their marks but nobody believed in the performance. Around midnight, he gave up on sleep and got dressed. Ella was staying at the hotel in town while the ranch was being rebuilt, so he was alone in the small room they'd set up in what used to be the bunkhouse. He strapped on the peacemaker, his ribs complained but he ignored them, and walked out into the night. The desert was peaceful under a 3/4 moon, stars scattered across the sky like spilled salt. In the distance, coyotes called to each other. Normal sounds, safe sounds. He was halfway to the new house foundation when he saw the glow. Fire, coming from town. Not big enough to be a building, but definitely fire. Calder started running, each footfall sending pain through his chest. By the time he reached the edge of town, he was gasping and tasting blood. The fire was in the town square, right where the memorial stone stood. Someone had piled wood around it and set it burning, and spray-painted across the stone in red letters were the words, "This isn't over." Carson was already there with Jenkins and O'Hara, stamping out the flames. A crowd was gathering, people emerging from homes in nightclothes, worried and afraid. "Who did this?" Calder asked between gasps. "Don't know. We were doing rounds on the other side of town. By the time we saw the fire and got here, whoever did it was gone." Carson kicked dirt over the last of the flames. Could be those three who escaped from Coulter's gang. Could be someone new. Or it could be Webb, Calder said, sending a message that his employer isn't giving up after all. But he said, "I know what he said. I also know what that says." Calder gestured at the defaced memorial. "Actions speak louder than words." Martha Crane pushed through the crowd, her face pale with anger. "This is unacceptable. We won't be terrorized again." "We're not being terrorized," Calder said. "We're being tested. Someone wants to see if we'll break, if the fear will come back." "Will it?" someone in the crowd asked. Calder looked at the faces around him. A month ago, they'd been ready to fight and die for their freedom. But fear was persistent. It crept back in through cracks, whispered in dark moments, made people question their courage. "Only if we let it," he said firmly. "Tomorrow we clean this up and repair the memorial. We double the watch. We stay alert. But we don't let fear win. That's what they want, to break us without having to fight us. We don't give them that satisfaction." People nodded, looking reassured, but Calder caught Carson's eye and saw his own worry reflected there. This was just the beginning. Whoever was behind this wasn't done. The crowd eventually dispersed, people heading back to their homes with promises to help clean up in the morning. Calder stayed, staring at the painted words. "You should go back to the ranch," Carson said. "Get some rest. We'll handle the watch." "I'm staying in town tonight. Something's not right." "You think they'll try something else?" "I think someone's trying to make us afraid again. And the best way to do that is keep hitting us when we think we're safe." Carson considered this. "You might be right. I'll post extra guards. Jenkins, O'Hara, double up on the patrols. Anyone sees anything suspicious, fire a warning shot." The two federal men nodded and headed off in opposite directions. Carson stayed with Calder, both of them watching the darkness beyond the firelight. "How long you planning to stay?" Carson asked after a while. "Long as it takes. Your ribs are going to give out before the night does." "Probably, but I'll deal with that when it happens." They stood in silence, listening to the night sounds. An hour passed. 2. Nothing happened. Maybe Calder was being paranoid. Maybe the vandalism was just a random act by Coulter's remnants, not part of some larger plan. Then they heard it. Glass breaking, somewhere near the north end of town. Both men were moving before the sound finished echoing, running toward the source. The general store's window was shattered. Inside, someone was moving. Calder pulled his gun and Carson did the same. "Come out," Carson shouted. "Come out slow with your hands up." A figure emerged from the darkness inside the store. Young, maybe 18, wearing ragged clothes and holding a bag. One of Coulter's escaped men, probably. He looked terrified. "Don't shoot! I'm not armed!" "Drop the bag," Calder said. The kid dropped it. Supplies spilled out. Food, water, bandages. "I was just hungry," the kid said, voice shaking. "I haven't eaten in 3 days. I wasn't trying to. I didn't mean—" Carson moved forward and grabbed him, checking for weapons. Found none. "You're one of Coulter's." "I was. But I left. I ran after the fight. I've been hiding in the desert, trying to survive. Please. I don't want any trouble." Calder studied him. The terror in his eyes looked genuine. This wasn't someone making a statement or sending a message. This was just a scared kid who'd made bad choices and was now paying for them. "Lock him up," Calder told Carson. "We'll figure out what to do with him in the morning." As Carson led the kid away, Calder stayed to board up the broken window. His ribs were screaming now, each nail he hammered sending fire through his chest. Moss was going to kill him. He was finishing up when he heard footsteps behind him. He spun, gun coming up. Ella stood there, hands raised. "Easy, it's me." "What are you doing out here?" "Heard the commotion. Came to help." She looked at the boarded window. "More trouble?" "Just a hungry kid, but I think we need to talk about security." They walked back toward the hotel, Calder filling her in on his suspicions about Webb and the vandalized memorial. Ella listened without interrupting, her expression growing darker. So you think someone's planning another takeover, she said when he finished. I think someone's testing our defenses, seeing how we react, whether we're still united or starting to fracture. And are we? Too early to tell, but people are scared again. You saw their faces at the memorial. One act of vandalism, and all that courage starts wavering. Ella was quiet for a moment. Then we need to remind them why they fought in the first place. Show them they're stronger than they think. How? I don't know yet, but we'll figure it out. She stopped outside the hotel. Get some sleep, Calder. You look like you're about to collapse. I'm fine. You're not. You're running on stubbornness and denial. Your ribs are probably cracked open again. Go to Moss in the morning and let him check you out. Yes, Mother. She punched his arm, gently, but enough to make her point. I'm serious. We need you alive and functional, not dead from being too stubborn to rest. He couldn't argue with that logic. I'll see Moss tomorrow. Good. Now go. He went climbing the stairs to the room Ella had been letting him use when he stayed in town. The bed was soft, but sleep still wouldn't come. His mind kept turning over possibilities, looking for patterns. Webb showing up, asking innocent questions, then leaving. Hours later, the memorial vandalized. Could be coincidence. Could be strategy. Show your face as reasonable, then strike from the shadows to create fear while maintaining deniability. If that was the play, it was smart. Smarter than Coulter's brute force approach. This was psychological warfare, designed to break spirits without risking armed confrontation. Calder needed more information, needed to know who Webb really worked for and what their endgame was. Morning came too fast. He dragged himself out of bed and went to see Moss as promised. The doctor took one look at him and started cursing. You tore something loose, I can tell just by looking at you. Get on the table. Calder obeyed. Moss unwrapped his bandages and examined the damage, his expression growing progressively more annoyed. You're bleeding internally again. Not bad, but bad enough. What were you doing? Running, hammering, the usual? The usual is going to kill you. I've told you repeatedly. You need rest. Your body can't heal if you keep tearing it apart. Moss started rewrapping the bandages, tighter this time. 2 weeks minimum of actual rest. No lifting, no running, no heroics, or I swear I'll tie you to this table myself. Can't rest. The town needs you alive more than it needs you active. We've got Carson, Jenkins, O'Hara, and a dozen armed citizens who can handle security. What we don't have is another you. Moss finished the bandaging and stepped back. Promise me 2 weeks of rest or I'll tell Ella you're being difficult and let her deal with you. Calder knew when he was beaten. Fine. 2 weeks. Starting now. Starting tomorrow. I need to talk to that kid Carson arrested last night. Moss sighed but nodded. One conversation, then rest. The jail was a sturdy building on the east side of town, one of the few Coulter hadn't damaged because he'd used it himself. The kid was in the same cell where Ella had been held, sitting on the cot with his head in his hands. Carson was at the desk, filling out paperwork. He's been cooperative, answered every question, says his name's Tommy Price, from Missouri originally. Got recruited by Coulter 6 months ago with promises of easy money. How'd that work out for you? Calder asked Tommy. The kid looked up, eyes red from crying. I never wanted to hurt anyone, I just needed work. My family's farm failed and I had to send money back to them. Coulter said all I'd have to do is stand around looking tough. He didn't tell me about the killing. But you stayed, even after you saw what he was doing. I was scared. He said anyone who left would be hunted down and killed. I believed him. Tommy stood, gripping the bars. I didn't participate in the bad stuff. I swear. I just stood guard sometimes, that's all. Where are the other 2 who escaped? Calder asked. Don't know. We split up the night of the fight. Haven't seen them since. Did you vandalize the memorial last night? Tommy looked confused. What memorial? I don't know what you're talking about. I just broke into the store because I was starving. Calder believed him. The kid was too scared and confused to be lying effectively. What do you know about Coulter's backers? Calder asked. The people who funded him? Nothing. He never talked about them around us low-level guys. But I heard him mention someone once. A name. Sounded like Thornton or Thornhill. Something with a thorn in it. Thornton, Calder repeated. You're sure? Pretty sure. He was talking to one of his lieutenants saying, Thornton's going to be pissed if we don't secure this territory soon. That's all I heard. It wasn't much, but it was something, a name to investigate. What's going to happen to me? Tommy asked. Carson answered. You'll be sent to Santa Fe for trial along with the other two we already have. Judge will decide your sentence based on your level of involvement. If what you're saying is true and you didn't participate in the violence, might go easier on you. Tommy sagged with relief. Thank you. I just want to go home. See my family. Calder left the jail feeling like pieces were starting to come together. Thornton. Webb represented someone named Thornton who wanted the territory for mining. That was more than they'd had an hour ago. He found Ella at the hotel, having breakfast with Martha. They looked up as he entered. You look terrible, Martha said. Moss says the same thing. I'm starting to think it's not a compliment. He sat down heavily, trying not to wince. Got a name. Coulter's backer might be someone called Thornton. Thornton, Martha repeated, thinking. I know that name. Big mining interests out of Denver. Thornton Industrial, I think. They've been buying up mineral rights all over the territory. Could be our man. Webb probably works for them. So what do we do? Ella asked. We find out what Thornton wants, and whether they're willing to come after us again. And we prepare for the worst while hoping for the best. The next 2 weeks were tense. Calder kept his promise to Moss and actually rested, spending most of his time at the ranch reading and planning the rebuild. His ribs slowly healed again, the pain becoming manageable. The town remained on a high alert. No more incidents occurred, but everyone stayed watchful. Carson organized a volunteer patrol system so the burden didn't fall entirely on the federal men. Marshal Reeves returned briefly, bringing news. I looked into Thornton Industrial. Big company, politically connected, not known for taking losses gracefully. If they backed Coulter and lost their investment, they might try again. How do we stop them? Calder asked. Legally. Make it too expensive to be worth their while. File claims on all the mineral rights around here. Get federal recognition for the town's boundaries. Build a paper wall so strong they can't just muscle in. Reeves handed over a stack of documents. I've started the process, but you'll need to finish it. Martha should handle the legal side. She's got the head for it. And illegally? Reeves smiled grimly. You did that already. Showed them you'll fight. Sometimes that's the best deterrent. After Reeves left, life continued its slow march toward normal. The new ranch house took shape, walls rising where ash had been. Ella threw herself into the work with fierce determination, and Calder watched his sister transform from someone who'd been saved into someone who saved herself daily through sheer will. The town thrived under Martha's leadership. Businesses reopened. New people started arriving, folks who'd heard about Brimstone Crossing standing up to tyranny and wanted to be part of something brave. The population actually grew. 6 weeks after Coulter's death, the memorial was rededicated with new stone, unmarred by paint. The whole town attended again, but this time it felt less like mourning and more like celebration. They'd survived. They'd won. Calder stood at the back of the crowd, watching. His ribs were mostly healed now, though they'd never be quite right. Moss said he'd probably feel them ache before storms for the rest of his life. Small price. Ella found him after the ceremony. You thinking about leaving? What makes you say that? You get this look sometimes, like you're already gone. He considered lying, but didn't. I think about it. Whether I could just ride out, start fresh somewhere nobody knows my name. Somewhere I'm not the man who killed Coulter. But this is home, and running doesn't actually solve anything, just moves the problems around. She linked her arm through his. Good, because I need you here. This ranch isn't going to build itself. They walked back toward their horses, passing people who nodded and smiled. The town had changed. Or maybe they just revealed what had always been there underneath the fear: strength, courage, community. As they rode out of town, Calder looked back one last time. Brimstone Crossing sat in the valley like it always had, but different now. Alive. The fear that had suffocated it for months was gone, replaced by something harder to kill. Hope. The ranch was waiting, work was waiting, life was waiting, and for the first time since Sheriff Bridger died, Calder felt like the future might actually be worth seeing. The house was finished by late October, when the desert air turned crisp at night and the days grew shorter. It stood larger than the old one, with wider rooms and a porch that wrapped around three sides. Ella had designed it with care. Separate quarters for people who might need temporary shelter, a kitchen big enough to feed a crowd, windows positioned to catch the morning light. Calder stood on that porch the morning after they moved in, coffee in hand, watching the sun paint the desert gold. His ribs still ached when the weather changed, just like Moss had predicted. Small reminder that some wounds never completely healed. You just learn to live with them. Thinking deep thoughts? Ella emerged with her own coffee, settling into the chair beside him. Thinking about how much changes in a few months. Last time I stood here, there was a house behind me. Now there's a different house, same land, different everything else. You regret it? Any of it? Calder considered the question honestly. I regret that people died. I regret that it came to violence, but the outcome? No. We're free. That's worth the cost. Even almost dying? Even that. He sipped his coffee. Death doesn't scare me anymore. I got too close to it. Now it's just something that'll happen eventually, not worth spending life afraid of. Ella was quiet for a moment. That's a lonely way to think. Maybe, but it's honest. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the desert wake up. A roadrunner darted past, chasing breakfast. Somewhere in the distance, cattle lowed. Normal sounds, peaceful sounds. The peace lasted another hour. Benjamin arrived mid-morning, riding hard enough that his horse was lathered. Calder knew before the man even dismounted that trouble had found them again. "Town!" Benjamin gasped, sliding from the saddle. "Webb's back, and he brought friends." Calder was moving before Benjamin finished speaking, grabbing his gun belt from inside and buckling it on. His ribs twinged in protest but held. Ella was right behind him, already armed. "How many?" Calder asked as they saddled their horses. Didn't stop to count. At least a dozen. Maybe more. They rode in like they owned the place, headed straight for the hotel. They made the ride to town in 20 minutes, pushing the horses harder than was wise. Calder could see the crowd gathered in the square before they even reached Main Street. People standing in worried clusters, watching the hotel. Deputy Carson met them at the edge of the crowd. "Glad you're here." Webb showed up with 15 men, all armed, all professional looking. Says he needs to speak with town leadership. "Where's Martha?" "Inside the hotel with him. She told me to get you." Calder dismounted and headed for the hotel entrance. Ella stayed close, one hand on her revolver. The lobby was full of Webb's men, hard-faced professionals who watched Calder's approach with flat, calculating eyes. These weren't thugs like Coulter's gang. These were soldiers. Webb stood near the desk, looking exactly as composed as before. When he saw Calder, he smiled. "Mr. Carter, thank you for coming." "What do you want, Webb?" "To make a final offer. May we speak somewhere private? You, me, Miss Crane, and your sister?" Martha emerged from the dining room, her face set in hard lines. "We can talk in here. It's empty." They filed into the dining room, the four of them plus Webb. His men stayed in the lobby, silent and watchful. Webb settled into a chair like he was at a business meeting, pulling out papers from his case. "I'll be direct. My employer, Mr. Jonathan Thornton of Thornton Industrial, wants this territory. The mineral surveys show significant deposits of silver and copper in the surrounding hills. Very valuable deposits." "This land isn't for sale," Martha said. "Everything's for sale, Miss Crane. It's simply a matter of price." Webb spread the papers on the table. "Mr. Thornton is prepared to offer generous compensation, $10,000 for the town's mineral rights. Individual ranch owners can negotiate separately for their land." "And if we refuse?" Calder asked. "Then Mr. Thornton will pursue other legal avenues. He has significant political connections. Federal claims, territorial disputes, environmental surveys. There are numerous ways to tie up this land in legal proceedings for years. You'd spend everything you have fighting in courts and likely lose anyway." "Or," Ella said, "there's always an or with men like your boss." Webb's smile widened slightly. "Or you could accept the generous offer and everyone walks away satisfied. Mr. Thornton gets his mining operation. You get compensated fairly, no blood, no violence, no years of legal battles." "No," Calder said. "I haven't finished. Don't need you to finish. The answer's no. This is our home, our land, our town. It's not for sale at any price." Webb's expression hardened. Mr. Carter, I admire your courage. Truly. But courage doesn't pay legal fees. Courage doesn't feed families when courts freeze your assets. Be practical. Practical is what got us into trouble with Coulter, Martha said. We were practical. We compromised. We told ourselves that survival mattered more than dignity, and we nearly lost everything. She stood, gathering the papers and shoving them back at Webb. The answer is no. Now get out of our town. Webb collected his papers slowly, deliberately. You're making a mistake. Mr. Thornton is not a patient man. When legal methods fail, he's been known to pursue alternative approaches. Like hiring Coulter? Ella asked. I don't know what you're implying. Yeah, you do. Your boss hired Coulter to terrorize this town, make us desperate enough to sell. It didn't work. So now you're here with threats dressed up as business offers. Ella leaned forward. Here's what you're going to do. You're going to go back to Thornton and tell him this territory is closed, permanently. Tell him we have federal protection, legal claims on all mineral rights, and a town full of people who've already proven they'll fight to the death to keep what's theirs. Webb stood, tucking his papers away. Passionate speech, Miss Carter. But passion fades. Desperation doesn't. He headed for the door, pausing at the threshold. You have 1 week to reconsider. After that, Mr. Thornton proceeds with less pleasant options. He left, his men following. Within minutes, they'd mounted up and ridden out of town, leaving a wake of unease behind them. The four of them sat in the dining room, processing what had just happened. He's going to come after us, Benjamin said. He'd slipped in during the confrontation, listening from the doorway. Maybe not with guns like Coulter did, but with lawyers and politicians and legal maneuvers we can't fight. Then we get our own lawyers, Martha said. We pool our resources, hire the best legal representation we can afford. With what money? Ella asked. The town fund's already stretched thin from rebuilding. Most people are barely scraping by. Calder had been quiet, thinking. We need leverage. Something that makes it more expensive for Thornton to fight us than to leave us alone. Like what? Information. Proof that he hired Coulter. If we can connect him to the murders, the terror, everything that happened here, if we can make that public, his political connections won't save him. Nobody wants to be associated with a man who hired a known criminal to slaughter innocent people. Martha nodded slowly. The prisoners in Santa Fe, Coulter's men, they might talk if offered the right deal. It's worth trying. Calder stood, his mind already planning. Carson can send a telegram to Marshal Reeves, ask him to question the prisoners. If they give up Thornton, we've got our leverage. And in the meantime, Benjamin asked, in the meantime, we prepare for the worst. Double the patrols. Make sure everyone's armed. If Thornton sends more men like Coulter, we need to be ready. They spent the rest of the day organizing. Carson sent the telegram to Reeves. The town council met and voted to hire a lawyer from Santa Fe, a young attorney named Morrison, who'd recently won a case against mining interests in another territory. Martha coordinated the defense preparations, assigning patrol shifts and establishing communication protocols. Calder and Ella returned to the ranch as evening fell, both exhausted. You think Reeves will find anything? Ella asked as they unsaddled their horses. I think men like Coulter don't operate in a vacuum. They need money, supplies, support. That leaves a trail. Whether Reeves can follow it far enough to reach Thornton. Calder shrugged. We'll know soon enough. That night, Calder couldn't sleep again. He stood on the porch, watching stars wheel overhead, thinking about choices and consequences. They could have taken Thornton's money, could have sold out and moved somewhere else, started fresh. Part of him wondered if that would have been smarter, but only a small part. The larger part knew that some things couldn't be compromised. Your home, your dignity, your right to exist without someone else's boot on your neck. 3 days later, Marshal Reeves arrived with news. The town gathered in the square to hear it. Reeves stood on the hotel porch, looking grim but satisfied. I questioned the prisoners, he announced. Took some convincing, but eventually they talked. Coulter was hired by Jonathan Thornton specifically to destabilize this territory. The plan was to create enough chaos that people would either flee or sell their land cheap. Thornton would then buy everything up through shell companies, establish his mining operations, and profit from the minerals. Murmurs rippled through the crowd, confirmation of what they'd suspected, but hearing it stated as fact made it real. I filed charges against Thornton, Reeves continued, Federal prosecutors are reviewing the case. With the testimony from Coulter's men and evidence of financial transfers, we have a strong case for conspiracy to commit murder, among other charges. What does this mean for us? Martha asked. It means Thornton's going to be too busy defending himself in court to bother with you. His assets are being frozen pending investigation. Any further action against this town would only strengthen the prosecution's case that he's a threat. Reeves smiled. You're safe. For real this time. The crowd erupted in cheers. People hugged each other, crying with relief. 3 months of fear, violence, and uncertainty finally ending not with a gunfight, but with the law doing what it was supposed to do. Calder felt Ella's hand slip into his. We won, she said. We survived, he corrected, echoing her words from months ago. But yeah, we won too. The celebration lasted into the night. Someone brought out a fiddle, and people danced in the street. Food appeared from various kitchens, shared freely. For the first time since Sheriff Bridger's death, Brimstone Crossing felt like a real town again. People coming together not from fear, but from joy. Calder stayed for an hour, then slipped away. Too much noise, too many people. His ribs were aching, and he was tired down to his bones. He found himself in the cemetery, standing before the memorial stone. Names carved into granite. Sheriff Bridger, Thomas York, Emma York, and others. People who died because one man decided profit mattered more than life. We got him, Calder said to the stone. Not personally, not with bullets, but we got him. That count for anything? The stone didn't answer, but Calder felt something settle in his chest. Closure, maybe. Or just acceptance that justice came in different forms. Footsteps behind him. He turned to find Doc Moss approaching, medical bag in hand. Figured I'd find you here, Moss said. You left the celebration early. Not much for crowds. How are the ribs? Aching, but manageable. Moss studied him in the moonlight. You know, when I first treated you after that beating on the road, I didn't think you'd make it. The damage was too severe. But you're stubborn, pulled through on sheer force of will. That's one word for it. It's the right word. You could have stayed down, could have let fear win, but you got back up. And in doing so, you showed everyone else they could get back up too. Moss gestured at the town behind them, still celebrating. That's your real victory. Not killing Coulter, not stopping Thornton, but showing people they're stronger than they think. Calder hadn't thought about it that way. He'd just done what needed doing, one step at a time, too stubborn or stupid to quit. You think it'll last? He asked. The courage, the unity, all of it? As long as they remember how they got it, fear's always going to try to creep back in. That's human nature. But so is courage. So is standing up when it matters. Moss clapped his shoulder. You gave them a choice. They chose right. That's all any of us can do. They walked back to town together, the sounds of celebration growing louder. Calder rejoined the gathering, finding Ella dancing with Benjamin. Martha was holding court near the food tables, telling the story of Webb's failed intimidation attempt with dramatic flair. Even Danny, the telegraph operator, was there, laughing and talking, his bruises finally healed. The party went late into the night. Eventually, people drifted home, exhausted but happy. Calder and Ella were among the last to leave, riding back to the ranch under a sky full of stars. What happens now? Ella asked. Now we live. Build the ranch, help the town. Wake up each day and choose not to be afraid. Sounds simple when you say it like that. The best things usually are. We just make them complicated. The weeks that followed settled into routine. The ranch thrived under their attention. They bought more cattle, expanded the grazing area, built corrals and a proper barn. Ella's idea about making it a refuge took shape too. They took in a young widow whose husband had died in Coulter's reign, gave her a place to stay while she got back on her feet. Then a family passing through with nowhere to go. Then others. The ranch became more than just a home. It became proof that something good could grow from ashes. In town, life flourished. Deputy Carson was officially appointed sheriff by the territorial government. The town elected a proper council with Martha as mayor. Businesses thrived as word spread about the town that had stood up to tyranny and won. New people arrived regularly, drawn by the story, wanting to be part of something brave. Thornton went to trial in Denver. The case made national news. Wealthy industrialist charged with conspiracy to commit murder. He was convicted and sentenced to 20 years in prison. His company was dissolved, assets distributed to victims. Brimstone Crossing received a settlement, not the 10,000 Thornton had offered, but over 50,000 in damages. The town used it to build a school, improve the roads, establish a proper bank with safeguards against future corruption. 6 months after Coulter's death, Calder stood on his porch, watching the sunrise, the same as he had countless mornings. But something was different. The weight he'd been carrying, the anger, the fear, the constant vigilance, had lifted. He wasn't the same man who'd woken from that coma. That man had been harder, colder, willing to die because he'd already been so close to death. This man, the one standing here now, wanted to live, wanted to see what came next. Ella joined him with coffee, settling into what had become their morning ritual. "Thinking about leaving?" she asked, the same question as before. "No, thinking about staying." "What changed?" "I did. Figured out that running from fear and running towards something better aren't the same thing. I was running from fear, but there's nothing to run from anymore." "So you're staying?" "I'm staying." He sipped his coffee. "Someone's got to help you run this refuge ranch operation you've built. It's not just me. You built it too. We built it. Together. Like everything else." The sun climbed higher, burning off the morning chill. In the distance, Calder could see cattle grazing peacefully. Closer, smoke rising from the ranch house chimney. Inside, the widow and her 2 children would be starting breakfast. The family in the south quarters would be waking up, planning their day. Life continuing, life thriving. A year after Coulter's death, the town held an anniversary memorial. Not mourning this time, but celebrating survival. The memorial stone was surrounded by flowers. People shared stories of loved ones lost, but also stories of how they'd found courage to fight back. Calder was asked to speak. He declined at first, but Martha insisted. "You started this," she said. "You should finish it." So he stood before the gathered crowd and spoke from the heart. "I'm not good with speeches, most of you know that. But I've been thinking about what happened here, what it means. And I've realized something. Evil doesn't win because it's stronger. It wins because good people convince themselves they're powerless. That's what Coulter counted on, our belief that we couldn't fight back, that resistance was futile." He paused, looking at the faces watching him, people who'd found their courage and held on to it. "But we proved him wrong. Not because we were braver or stronger or better armed. We proved him wrong because we decided our dignity mattered more than our fear. And once we decided that, once we chose to stand up, everything changed." He gestured at the town around them. "This place isn't special because of what we did. It's special because of what we chose to be. We chose to be people who don't surrender, who don't give in, who protect each other instead of abandoning each other. That choice, that's what saved us. And that choice is available to anyone, anywhere, facing any kind of evil." He stepped back. Done. The crowd was silent for a moment. Then they began to applaud, the sound building until it echoed off the buildings. After the ceremony, Calder walked to the cemetery alone. He stood before his parents' graves, which he'd neglected during all the chaos. "Sorry I haven't visited much," he said to the stones. "Been busy saving the ranch you built. Thought you'd understand." The desert wind whispered through the grass. Calder stood there, remembering. His father teaching him to rope cattle. His mother singing while she cooked. The life they'd built from nothing, the values they'd passed down. Stand up for what's right. Protect the weak. Never let fear make your choices. He'd done that. Hadn't always done it perfectly, hadn't always done it easily. But he'd done it. "We're okay now," he told them. "Ella and me, the ranch, the town. It's all okay. You can rest easy." He stayed until sunset, then walked back to where Ella was waiting with the horses. "You ready to go home?" she asked. Home. A year ago, home had been ashes. Now it was a house full of people, a ranch full of life, a future full of possibility. "Yeah," he said. "I'm ready." They rode back under a sky turning purple and gold, the desert spreading around them in endless possibility. The land that had nearly killed him, that had tested him beyond anything he'd thought he could endure, was now the land he'd chosen to make his stand on. Not because it was easy, because it was worth it. The ranch appeared in the distance, lights glowing in the windows, people inside waiting, life waiting. Calder urged his horse forward, riding toward home, toward the future, toward whatever came next with the certainty of someone who'd already survived the worst and found themselves still standing. Fear would come again. It always did. But now he knew, and the whole town knew, that fear only had as much power as you gave it, and they'd given it nothing. That was the real victory. Not defeating one tyrant, but proving that tyranny itself could be beaten. That ordinary people, pushed far enough, could find extraordinary courage. The story of Brimstone Crossing spread far beyond the desert. It became legend, the town that fought back, the people who refused to surrender, the man who came back from death to save them. Some details got exaggerated in the telling. Calder became larger than life, his survival more miraculous, his actions more heroic. But the core truth remained. When faced with impossible odds, they'd chosen to fight. And they'd won. Not cleanly, not without cost, but they'd won. As Calder dismounted in front of the ranch house, Ella beside him, the door opened and light spilled out. The widow, Mary, her name was, stood there with a smile. "Dinner's ready? You two coming?" "Yeah," Calder said. "We're coming." He unsaddled his horse, put the equipment away with practiced efficiency, and walked toward the house, toward the light, toward the life he'd nearly lost and had fought to keep. Behind him, the desert stretched away into darkness. But here, in this house, on this land, there was light, there was life, there was home, and that was enough. That was everything.